Welcome to the Living Medicine podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of Living Medicine. I am Dr. Sandy Newis. I'm a co-founder of Living Medicine Institute, which is a business providing content, resources, and trainings for clinical and medical professionals in the psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy space with the specialization in ketamine and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy specifically. And I am excited to be here with Jayne Gumpel. I know Jayne as an innovator in the space, as a senior clinician in the space, as a wise woman who mixes kind of good clinical services with poetry. And I see that in her work. I know of her as a retreat leader, and also somebody who has expertise in couples work. So I know people are excited about that, and we'll get to that. But yeah, I want to just kind of acknowledge that I've seen Jayne's poetry on Big Tent Ketamine, which you are one of the co-founders of that, correct? All right.
I'm a facilitator. Carl Spitzer is the only founder, really, but I'm one of the principals.
Right.
So we gather together and support Carl, really.
Good. Well, I love that. And for those who don't know, Big Tent Ketamine is a community space where people come together and talk about issues related to ketamine, and there's lots of different offerings there if you're interested in that. So thank you, Jayne. Thank you so much. I've been following your work really since I dropped into the ketamine space, and I started doing this work in 2019, and I began to hear about your retreats and your trainings and things from others. So I'm really excited to have you here. So anything else you want to add in terms by way of introduction?
No, I'm just thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. This is work that I love, that loves me back. I mean, how great is that? So I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, well, you are welcome. So, so that, you say that work moves me, and, I forget what you said. It was quite eloquent, but moves me back. But
loves me back.
There you go.
I mean, right? How great is it to have work that I just feel inspired by and grow through all the time, every day. I love it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
I love that. So that kind of leads to the first question about, everybody's got their journey, right? And we don't need all the ins and outs, but what moved you into the psychedelic medicine space, and what kind of keeps you committed to that space?
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful question. I don't know how far back to go.
It's open-ended, like however you want it far back to go.
Yeah. Well, I would say in the 70s when I was riding bareback in the Andes, eating mushrooms out of cow plops, I'm thinking to myself, this should be in the water system. Right. It was just such a beautiful experience, or several experiences, when I lived in Colombia, South America.
Nice. Uh-huh.
And, was just exposed to that space of consciousness that was so beautiful in my youth. So I think that was always in the back of my mind. And then also, experiencing LSD as a young woman, and what that felt like, but really no way to integrate it. So it always felt sort of separate, from my life, even though it opened my eyes to a lot of things, during the Vietnam War. But bring me to now. And I think what really got me involved with ketamine is in my couples practice. And I had a couple reach out to me that I had been working with on and off for 10 years, and they were really stuck. And I knew the stuck place they were in. He made up a story about something. She made up a story about something. The story was not in alignment. Yeah. They didn't trust each other. She didn't feel trusted. He didn't trust her. Yeah. There was a lot of jealousy. I mean, I'm narrowing it down, right? But
yeah.
And we did a lot of beautiful work over 10 years on and off, but we never really got to the place where that issue resolved. Not only was it not forgiven, but it wasn't resolved. It kind of hung there like a shingle stuck to a roof, And they called me and they asked me if I would facilitate a psilocybin session with them.
Oh, interesting.
And I said, I can't do that. It's not legal.
Right.
But I would be happy to work with you with ketamine. I've not really worked with ketamine before with a couple. but I'm learning about it at the Woodstock Therapy Center, and I know a little something something about it. So I just want to be transparent. I don't have any experience working with couples, but I know you. And they
Yeah.
will like sign me up before
Yeah.
I could even finish talking to them about it. So they rented a little place up here in Woodstock,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a prep session or a couple of prep sessions. And then I met with them up here, and I have to tell you, it was like a little miracle. I couldn't believe it, what happened in the session with,
Oh,
you
nice.
know, I think they each took 300 milligrams sublingual.
Well, and
This
did
was
you
like
do
five,
it
5 years
together?
ago.
Right. So you did both of them in the same room?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. They both
Right.
came in together. All my work with them was always together as a
Right.
couple, right? And we had a lot of respect and high regard for each other. I just love them as human beings, both of them.
Yeah.
You know, they're just wonderful, very successful human beings on so
Yeah.
many levels,
Mm.
right? No pathology there. Just this narrative. That we all have our narratives. This narrative that they got stuck in,
Mm-hmm.
and so we did the prep sessions. I explained to them what ketamine was to the best of my ability and what to expect. And we worked on what their intentions could be. And, I gave them all you're going to use eye shades and the chairs recline, and we're
Uh-huh.
going to use sublingual, lozenge under the tongue, the swishing, and then a consent. We went through the whole consent process, which I have an experiential way of working with consent, which
Mm-hmm.
I can share another time.
Yeah,
It just really gets us all dropped into what not having consent means, and
totally.
just to be able to talk about that and then to sign the consent form so it doesn't feel like an
Mhm.
academic process.
Oh, I love
So
that.
consent,
Yeah.
and then referral to my colleague who was able to write the RX, right, an
Nice.
MD,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and they went through the medical interview,
Yeah.
which I believe I was present for in those days. I would go to the medical interview.
Bring that all the time in the world.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
But it's a
It
good
was
learning experience,
oh,
to be
totally. I
there.
mean,
I
it was
mean,
like the wild, wild west
right.
5 years ago,
Right.
working with couples. It's
Totally.
still very much a frontier, right? It's still
Oh, for
very
sure. The
pretty
couples
wild,
work.
wild west.
Yeah.
But so they came in, and of course they know me. So these are people who have a lot of trust in me. So that helps.
Yeah.
And I have a beautiful playlist, and
Nice.
I got them together, and they did the swishing, and I did this beautiful meditation with them that
Mm.
I wrote on dropping into your safe space first for yourself, and then welcoming your partner into your safe
Oh, I
space.
love that.
And then they're swishing, and they put the eye shades on, and they had their own individual journeys. That's sort of
Yeah.
the process that I use. I don't you do a psycholytic in this instance. I didn't. I have in the after that I've done a lot of psycholytic work with couples, that, and I can talk about
Mhm.
that too. But this was a psychedelic experience. And so I told them that I was not going to tinker with their internal experience, that it was inner guided, inner directed, right? And that I would wait at least a half hour, unless they raised their hand and they wanted to, obviously, talk or take their eye shades off. But neither one of them did. They were in their experience, and I could see that a lot of emotions were coming up for both of
Yeah.
them. After about 45 minutes to an hour, they come out of the medicine. I mean, they're still in it, but they're able to look at each other, and they're gazing at each other, and they're crying,
Oh,
both
oh, that's like the first
holding
thing that
each other.
emerged in terms
The
of like,
first thing that emerged,
oh my
and
gosh, that's
he
amazing.
says to her, "Oh my God, it was," and I was crying because it was just,
Oh,
when you have those moments when deep healing is happening, like
mm.
right before your eyes.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen that way, obviously,
Right.
but this was an example of that. And
Yeah.
so they're holding each other, and they're gazing at each other, and he says to her, "I am so, so sorry.
Oh,
So sorry." And
yeah.
she's looking at him, and she's saying, "I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. You can trust me, you
Mm-hmm.
can trust me." And so they held each other, and then they sat up,
Yeah.
and the arrangement that we made in the prep session was they would each share their direct experience.
Yeah.
So there'd be a sender or a sharer and a receiver, the person who is the noble listener, the person who receives the experience without interrupting, right? But just really leaning in with curiosity. And so he tells her in no uncertain terms, right? I made a terrible mistake. I see something about myself right now that I couldn't let myself see then.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared with her the story that he made up about an incident, about an experience that they had together that involved another person.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I can see that I had a homophobic reaction. I could see that this was really about me and not about you. And he tuned into his Latino sort of macho background and also his father's abuse. And he realized that he made up this story that was causing this huge rupture in their relationship. And she was able to receive it with such love and compassion that it actually completely dissolved that power struggle issue between the two of them.
Okay. So I have a really practical question first, just short. Like, how long was the session? Because that's always a question that people ask with lozenges
So
and pills.
with ketamine, it lasts, well, that particular session lasted about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So the medicine, 15 minutes when they arrived, 15 minutes to swish.
Yeah.
Then they spit. They each took 300 milligrams sublingual.
Yeah.
Swishing for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Both people spit.
Yeah.
Lay down for 45 minutes when they wanted to really talk and hold each other. Then sit up and share their direct experience with each other.
Okay.
And then
in that 45 minutes, sorry, just so we're all clear, because people ask us this question in our training program all the time. How would we do couple? So I'm going to move into what do you think it was about the ketamine that was helpful and what you did or didn't do too. But what I want to get clear on is we got the swishing, we got 15 minutes of preparation and meditation, we got 15 minutes of swishing. Then you said 45 minutes where they laid quietly together and talked. And were they talking much, and were you interacting with them in that phase?
They were silent for 45 minutes.
Okay.
About 35 to 45 minutes, they were both silent in their own, on their own journey, in their own experience.
Together, right.
In reclined chairs. Yeah. So they were not on a mat. They were in chairs that recline, right?
Yeah. So comfortable, chilling. What I know from when we do groups is people are very aware of each other while also in their internal process. So it's like you're in your journey, but you have awareness. I don't know if that fits.
Yes.
But, and then they gradually come out and then this beautiful thing emerges.
Yes. Yes. And then they were able to hold hands and embrace and, it was beautiful.
I mean, that is so
there was no talking for a while.
Yeah. You're not interacting with them during that time. They're just quietly. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think you did that helped with that? I mean, you've mentioned repeatedly that you have a relationship with them and they trusted you. So we're going to assume, that's a set and setting variable. Like you already had a relationship. You'd already done all preparation. Like you all came in with mutual trust and respect. So noted. That's important.
Yes.
In terms of the way that you set it up and then the ketamine itself, because that sounds like that was your first experience. So I imagine you're like, whoa.
With a couple. It was my first experience with a couple.
Right. I imagine you were like, whoa. So what are your thoughts? What was it that led to that? And then how has that fed into your work moving forward?
Well, what led to it was they asked me to do
so they wanted that.
And I said yes to the ketamine. Also, what really helped was the provider who gave the prescription is a colleague and a friend. Right. So we were able to communicate together. That helped. And I think, the ketamine is a portal, right? It's not so much, it's not the ketamine itself. It's the room that the doorway opens up to. And I tell people that, it's just one spoke on the wheel. Really the space that you're in that allows you to see the story. So it's all about meaning making.
Yeah.
So for them, it dropped their default mode network, more so in him than her.
Yeah.
I mean, her lament was, "Oh my God, you don't trust me, and
Yeah.
I'm so monogamous, and I so love you, and I so want you to trust me." But then she would dress really provocatively
Yeah.
and go out to the world as a passive aggressive response to it,
Mm.
but never cheated on him. But
Totally.
so his default mode network kind of relaxed, and he
Yeah.
was actually able to see something that his mind did not want to let him see
Yeah.
all these years, right?
Oh,
So
that's a really
it's the
beautiful way to
gift of
say
the
that.
ketamine,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, the gift of the ketamine is it really lets us approach the meaning making of the trauma in
Mm.
a more detached way,
Hmm.
but also in a way that brings in some compassion.
Yeah.
Like my objective reality is not necessarily the truth of things.
Yeah.
My subjective reality is informed by all sorts of things that I'm unaware of, like
Mhm.
my fear of maybe I'm bisexual, or maybe I'm this, or maybe I'm that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ketamine definitely has a role to play in that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It as a portal. In fact, I actually get asked that by people a lot about like plant medicines. And that's actually one of the things I say.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you think that could be a whole nother conversation, but I say,
Yeah.
me, I'm like, plant medicine, depending on your belief, is you may or may not be dealing with a whole separate energy of the actual plant. But ketamine is not that. Ketamine is a portal. It may lead you to similar places, but the ketamine is
Yeah.
not that. It's an opening. It's a tool. It's an opening that
Yes.
allows for things to emerge and shift more easily. So,
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's like it drops the gates, it drops the structure
mm,
that's built for good reason
yeah,
around things that were too traumatic for you to be able to metabolize fully. So you
mhm,
just make up a story about it that keeps you from it.
yeah,
You don't know you're doing that necessarily, right? So the ketamine kind of challenges meaning making, helps you challenge meaning making, kind of like EMDR,
hmm, yeah.
brings a different
I'm writing that
vision, a
down.
different
Helps
seeing.
challenge
Yeah.
meaning making. That's
Yeah.
really because what I talk about, I'm curious if you think this is like, I'm a really somatic nervous system based person, focus without, lots of training in psychodynamic, interpersonal, the
Yeah.
use of relationship in a more psychodynamic kind of way. So, what I've been that when your nervous system gets activated, then it actually distorts and shifts your meaning making because the
Yeah.
meaning making follows along with that, the level of kind of threat appraisal in the nervous system.
Yes.
So if your
Yes.
default mode network is always in that like high threat, then your meaning making is going to follow that.
Which I really try to approach with kindness,
Hmm.
validation, right? Standing, very important.
Yeah.
And we
Mhm.
talk a lot about meaning making, and I write a lot of poetry
Mm,
about it that I'll bring into session. But I really help them create a new story together with the
mm,
awareness that came about.
mm,
And it actually was, like I said before, it was like a little miracle.
mm,
So, the prep session was really important, helping them understand the molecule, what was going to happen. I gave them some things to read. The medical interview was important. That was 45 minutes. The
yeah.
process, coming in, the dosing session, sublingual, 300 milligrams each person,
Mm,
45 minutes of quiet,
mm,
45 minutes of sharing,
mhm, mhm,
the integration the next day, a
mm,
90-minute session. That was my model in
mhm,
those days. And we
mhm.
did that in person, obviously. And they got to share their direct experience, and they got to talk about how they're going to integrate that into their marriage.
Oh,
So
nice.
they got to talk about their relationship vision moving forward.
Mm,
And, because it's a big relief, but it's also like, who are we now without this story that's living between us, and
yeah.
how can we make best use of that? And then a follow up with them.
Mm,
And then they came to my retreat after that. They came to my
yeah.
couples retreat, my first couples retreat, which
Uh-huh.
was 18 couples. And people thought I was out of my mind,
Amazing. Okay,
18
how
couples,
many staff did you have? Or how many like
11.
staff? 11 staff. Okay.
11. I
Great.
mean, you can imagine I wanted a lot of support. And we
Right.
met we met every other Monday for almost a year as
Amazing.
a staff to get to know each other, to talk about it, to create the timeline, to
Yeah.
collaborate,
Yeah.
to help. They supported to help me, execute on my vision for this
Right.
because I thought, wow, how wonderful to make this be a group experience for couples.
Yeah.
Because we all know now, 5 years later, the group is the medicine.
Hmm.
It's such a profound experience when you have the right context and
Right.
you create safety for people. I mean, it's just a mind-blowing experience. But the first one, I didn't know what I was. I mean, I knew how to facilitate a workshop. I'm an imago therapist trained by Harville Hendricks,
Ah,
and I
well, that shows up.
I'm certified to do workshops by him, both for singles and couples.
Nice. Uh-huh.
Just love the work. I'm also an MBSR teacher,
Oh, nice.
mindfulness-based stress reduction. I was trained by John Kabat-Zinn.
Uh-huh.
Also a poet trained by Robert Bly, among
Right.
other people. He was
Yeah.
my teacher, Robert. So, I know what I'm doing. I
Right.
didn't know what I was doing, dosing 18 couples all at
No, I
once.
get it. Right.
That's right.
Well, that says something too. I want to just note, highlight that for a moment because, people, trainees come in and I'm like, we have to step into the fact that you knew a lot when you came in and
Yeah.
just going through the training, like, a lot more than many people doing the work. So kind of, stepping into that with curiosity, like knowing what you
Yeah.
do know and figuring out how to integrate it, like that's the innovation. Right.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
so, because what I hear and what you just said, I mean, I want to just highlight some things because I'm just sitting here and, like the piece about meaning making and how, getting the default mode network kind of offline helps to shift the meaning making. What I heard you say, tell me if I got this right. I mean, obviously there were a lot of pieces, but I think these things are important. What I just in terms of people who are learning and wanting to understand,
Sure. Sure.
kind of what the narrative is going in, which is the meaning making, what the story going in is and then how that might shift right through the work. And then you said you even had them write that down, like how their story, how their narrative shifts, right? You approach it with kindness and validation and understanding and acceptance.
No shame.
No
No
shame.
shame, no blame.
Right. And no shame, no blame. These are just the stories that we've created based on what I say is our brains are meaning making machine and every
Yes,
moment that you've
all for
had.
reasons, right? Yeah.
Right. Up to this moment influences it. So there's no shame there. That just is. Right. Like I'm always like, it's a miracle that anybody can be in a relationship at all, given that.
Yes, I know.
Right. And the importance of the preparation and the medical screen and recognizing that all of these pieces come into it, and then the integration and the noticing of the shifts that have occurred and allowing what was learned through that then to integrate into regular life. Is that accurate? So,
Yes, I would call that last piece crafting their relationship vision.
ooh, I love that. That is
Yeah.
nice. So you are definitely a pro. I love that.
Oh,
Your
thank
gift of
you.
language is clear even in this talking. And then that brings me to kind of, I have seen you post beautiful poems. I know you've already mentioned poetry is really important. I know that you are an innovator in this space. And so, the poetry piece and just also asking, you said that you were writing this book. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, for those of you listening, if you are interested in couples work, I have to say, ketamine is the bee's knees. I
Awesome.
used to think it was sort of a stepchild to MDMA, but
Yeah.
because MDMA is also very amazing, but it's very different.
Yeah.
And I have changed my worldview about that for working with couples. And you can do psycholytic work with couples with
Yeah.
50 milligrams
Yeah.
sublingual, which is
Okay.
I worked with 20 couples, 4 sessions each in a research project.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend that you consider working with ketamine with couples. I mean, it's just really a beautiful experience. I mean, people ask me how long have I been a couples therapist. I tell them since I'm 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided that I wanted to write a book about it, and
Uh-huh.
I'm creating this approach to working with couples, not just couples, but individuals. I would call it an approach. It's not a modality, but it's an approach. I'm using, you know how we have to take notes after our sessions, right?
Right.
And I used to dread that. It's like, I'd write a couple of lines in my calendar, in my book,
Uh-huh.
my
Right.
appointment book, and then
Uh-huh.
once a month or once every other month, I would put it in their folder, and it felt like a chore, like something I had
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to find a creative way that I felt passionate about
Hmm.
to work with my notes after the sessions. So I take notes during the session. I'll write down like a line or two. And then when the session is over, I write a poem about the session. Sometimes I'll write it in the voice of the wife. Sometimes I'll write it in the voice of the husband, or if it's same sex couple, partner A, partner B.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll write it from the perspective of the therapist.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'll collaborate with them. I'll send it to them and say, here, and I talk to them about my note taking, and can you add to it or collaborate? And so sometimes we collaborate, and what comes out of it is an amazing experience. But so sometimes the note is my view on
Yeah.
them. And what I do is I write one column of all the things that they're pissed off about, or they're saying, or they feel misunderstood, all the division,
Yeah.
it's you against me kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And then on the right-hand column, I write what I think each person is feeling,
Yeah.
what the real story is,
Mhm.
right? And using imago therapy, what it's connected to.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I try to get creative.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I have lots of
Okay.
examples if you want me to. I don't know if you want me to read one. I
How
can
about
certainly
one?
send
How
you.
about let's read one and then we'll, if we have more time, which I would love if we do, right? I really,
Okay.
what,
Mm,
what feels good to you?
yeah, picking one is the tough part.
Totally.
Yeah, let's see if I can find one from the voice of me.
So you're
Okay.
saying that you use this as a note-taking tool.
And I use it for therapy,
Okay.
not just a note-taking tool. I engage with the clients. I
Okay.
bring my poetry in, or I'll send it to them after the session is over.
Oh, that's
And
amazing. What a
sometimes we
gift.
do prompts and we write together.
Yeah.
Right. So the chapter that I'm writing follows a couple, same-sex couple. She's black, and it's a black woman and a white woman. And the black woman, she became really aware of being black is having PTSD in her mind. Her experience is to be black in this country is to have PTSD for her.
Hmm.
That she started to wake up to the sacrifice that she had to make throughout her life, and her fear and looking over her shoulder. And
Oh, for
she was,
sure.
was trying to explain that to her white partner
Yeah.
who loved her. And
Mhm.
her white partner got very defensive.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I love you. I never cared that you were black. She didn't get it.
Yeah.
So they came into couples therapy to resolve it, which they
Yeah.
did beautifully.
Oh, I love that.
They really did beautifully. So I wrote 3 poems.
Yeah.
I wrote one from her voice, one from the black woman's voice, one from the
Yeah.
white woman's voice, and then my own poem to them.
Yeah.
And the one that they eat for the individual voices, I don't know if I'm being clear, we collaborated on those. So I took their words and embedded them in the poems.
Hmm.
Right. And so it was collaborative. The poetry was collaborative, and we brought it into sessions over time.
Yeah.
But this is the one I wrote for them. Let me
Mm.
see if I can find it. Okay. This is called In the Space Between Us,
Yeah.
Reframing. And
Right.
this is from the voice of the therapist.
Nice.
There is a space between you, not a gap, but a
Yeah.
field.
Uh-huh.
And in that field, everything you fear and everything you long for waits to be spoken. One of you is hurting,
Mm-hmm.
one of you is listening, but with a shield instead of ears. This is where couples live before they wake.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I don't want to blame you. You said, I just want you to see me. I just want you to see. And so we begin. Joyce, you are the voice of longing to be seen in your fullness, to be held in your truth without needing to soften it for the comfort of another. Barbara, you are the heart that wants to love, but didn't know how deep love must reach to become real.
Mm-hmm.
You thought, if I don't see color, I can't harm you. But love is not blindness. Love is presence. Love sees everything. And then it happened. The miracle of staying, the sacred pause, the breath before the reply. The
Mm.
question asked not to connect, not to correct, but to connect.
Yeah.
Tell me more. This is the hinge of healing. That is where the story changes. When Barbara, you could listen without flinching. When Joyce, you could speak without shrinking.
Mm.
When pain became a shared truth rather than a private burden. You found the bridge, you walked towards one another, not to fix, but to feel together. This is not blame. This is becoming conscious. And in
Mm.
that space, the relational space, safety was born. Validation became real, and love finally had a place to land.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank
So,
you. So
bravo.
I was able to send that to them. I was able to
Yeah,
read that to them, and they took the poem from their voice and read it to each other in the
love
session.
that. That's so beautiful.
It was
Right.
amazing.
Right. And let's just also notice, right, that what you said before about the ketamine work, taking that default mode network offline enough to allow a new story to emerge,
Yes,
right?
that's
A
right.
new way of making meaning. So to me, clinically, that means that they softened enough that those words could land,
Yes.
not be blocked by the story. I mean, would that be kind of accurate in terms of the clinical process with that?
Yeah, I would say, the ketamine sort of it softened the edges around
Yeah.
what they were attached to.
Oh,
Their
nice.
ego could kind of release that,
Mm,
okay, well, maybe there's more here to it than my what I'm making it mean.
yeah.
It makes it more inclusive.
Yeah.
But it's the work that happens through it. It's one's capacity to step into that field of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And what happens in that space. So the ketamine is the portal.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So let's just talk about your clinical approach a little bit more, if that's okay. So first of all,
Sure.
just kind of applaud your innovation. I mean, like this is so innovative, like the use of poetry, even going into couples and doing the first couples retreat,
Mm.
and kind of, the integration of your different kind of clinical approaches and just the different ways that you approach that. Like, I've not heard of anyone using poetry in that way clinically at all, much less with ketamine. And I can only imagine how beautiful that is for your clients. So thank you for sharing that with us and,
Sure. My pleasure.
sharing your gift in that way. So, you mentioned that were trained in imago therapy, that trained as a trainer in MSBR by John Kabat-Zinn himself and by Harville Hendricks himself. So that implies, the use of mindfulness and kind of that use of the more relational transactional approach. That's probably not the best way to, describe that.
Yeah,
It's about
that's
being a
fine.
consultant on the maps, which is going to involve a lot of kind of somatic different types of approaches. And so how would you describe your clinical approach and what can people kind of learn from that?
Yeah. Well, so I'm also a trained Gestalt therapist.
Oh, okay,
I
great.
studied psychodrama with Hannah Wiener, who studied
Yeah,
with, his name just flew out of my head, but the creator of
right,
psychodrama.
right.
And I also studied with Alana Rubenfeld, body-centered psychotherapy, use of touch in the healing world, right?
Uh-huh.
So my approach is well, my big approach is my mission is to depathologize suffering. So I approach all my relationships with my clients,
Hmm.
place of curiosity, and I hope, to shift into the I thou dynamic, right? That I'm not pathologizing people. I don't label people. If I have to give them a number, so that they can get reimbursed for insurance. We talk about that. But we all suffer, all 8.5 billion of us, and we have a way of pathologizing it and putting numbers on it and then handing it over to big business, pharma,
Mm-hmm.
and people get just stuck in this cocktail of drugs. And
Totally.
anyway, that's my that's something that I kind of rail
Mm-hmm.
against.
Mm-hmm.
So I approach it, but meeting people where they are
Mm.
and choosing to be present, very present to what arises,
Mm-hmm.
noticing what's happening within me, and also appreciating what's being shared.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And imago therapy and theory has a big influence on me because it helps me identify what the third rails are. If
Yeah.
they drop onto the third rail of their childhood, it's really helpful to honor that,
Yeah.
to allow it to be in the room, to create safety through noble communication training, so that
Yeah.
they can see it in each other, and
Mm.
to say, okay, well, what this is familiar, isn't it?
Right.
And so they can see how their meaning making gets tangled up in the here and now relationship that they
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. Mm.
And mindfulness is very important. I teach everybody, all my couples, we start with a mindful minute. I
Yeah.
encourage everybody in my practice to meditate. I mean, that's really my medicine,
Mm-hmm.
meditation.
Mm-hmm. I
So
love
that has a big influence.
that.
Yeah.
I open every session with a body scan with a specific emphasis on I do it with all preparation and integration with a specific emphasis on noticing the places where your body is touching a surface so that we can
Yes.
pull that into the ketamine work, into the ketamine,
That's beautiful. Yes.
drawing them to that, kind of trying to incorporate the body into that mindfulness
Mhm.
piece. Um,
That's music to my ears.
Yeah, well, it provides a nice platform for people to return back if they get either too far out into the medicine or they get they get kind of too deep in the story or the trauma, they can always return back. And so there's a
Yeah.
titration piece that can be worked in there. So yeah, there's mindfulness, there's imago, there's a relational emphasis, there's that kind of, I hear that sprinkling of humanistic, unconditional positive regard pieces, which
Mhm.
I am delighted to see that emerging. There's creativity, there's innovation. Um, if you are undeniably an innovator in this space. So, what else would you like to say about your contribution in terms of innovation? And then I'm just going to kind of ask it before we close, just what do you see as important in the CAP space these days? That might be training, that might be where's the medicine going, any concerns? So in these last couple of minutes, where would you like to go with those things?
Wow. Um, well, I think where I'm going now is I ask myself, what do I want to do with my one wild and precious life as
Oh,
Mary
perfect.
Oliver, right?
Back to
And
the mystery.
maybe I have 5 years ahead of me to work, and
Oh,
I'd like to use my life force to bring group work to the fore. The group is the
okay.
medicine, and I'd like to use my time to craft messages and trainings that really help therapists find hopefulness and find a way to cultivate joy in the
Mhm.
world, in their own
Mhm.
practice, and by collaborating with other people. Like I
Yeah,
train therapists in the business of creating, cultivating joy retreats and groups. And I
nice.
want to use my time to do that. And I'm writing, I want to look at how can we reach the ineffable
Yeah,
with words, and poetry
yeah,
is like a little precious jewel there. And
yeah,
how can we bring that into the sessions? So that's kind of my current frontier, to
yeah.
drop into my creative process and to
I love that.
share it with people.
So let's talk about cultivating joy. How do we, I mean, like we all know the importance of that, right? But, as I've said in other, interviews and we talk about in training, our training is, I believe that one of the things psychedelic medicine is doing is helping us, I just named notice, tolerate, and sit with well-being. And
That's
that is a
beautiful. Yeah.
critical part of trauma recovery. And I
Yeah.
specialize in working with complex PTSD, relational trauma. And so, just to go back to what you were saying, tell me about your philosophy on cultivating joy, and then any thoughts on specifically on like for people who want to do that in their work, like what are some tools, strategies, conceptual frames that we can use for that?
All that in a minute
All
and a
that
half.
in 5 minutes. Yeah.
All
Really,
that in
I'm
a
just
bag of
kind of
potato
plugging
chips.
different ways we could go with that. Right. Now summarize your whole career and what you're doing right now.
Yes, in a minute.
AI.
Well, again, it's like the whole idea of cultivating joy, and I put an ing at the end of it. And I created this, by the way, with my son David.
Oh, nice.
We co-created the retreat business together.
Yeah.
We also created a nonprofit organization called Access Mindfulness. I can't tell you, that is joy working with my child, my grown child.
I bet.
He's amazing, and he's like the ballast in my boat. And he works for Fluence. He's their director of operations.
Oh, nice.
So, and we run retreats. In fact, we're doing one this weekend for couples at Menla.
I love that.
So, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So cultivating joy and ing instead of cultivate joy, cultivating, because it's something that we can do in the midst of it. And oftentimes we miss those moments of joy because our brain is focused on survival, fight, flight, overstimulated in a world where, it's pretty crazy what's happening, right? So it's hard to wrap one's brain around it. So I wouldn't say it's easy, but we get stuck in it. People watch the news, which I do not.
Right.
Watch the news in 3 years. I mean, I listen to NPR, and believe me, I know what's going on because everybody tells me all day long.
Right. I know it.
But I don't. So cultivating joy really comes from my belief that for the majority of us, we have capacity to experience joy in our life. And I'm not focusing on the negative in the retreats, but the fact that I know the group becomes the medicine and people have a corrective experience when they drop in and they participate in it, right? It's an amazing thing to have a corrective experience in group and with individuals that maybe a person hasn't had in a very long time. Because we isolate, we're suffering from burnout, depression. And I don't just mean individuals, professionals also. We do professional retreats, but for personal reasons, right?
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah, that's a nice thing to say. I mean, that's what I find that, it's again, there's that default mode network, that meaning making. If your hypervigilant brain is busy scanning the world for signs of threat, well, you're going to see it. And that's at the top of the heap of survival.
And you're going to search, you're going to start to look for it. It becomes a habit.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like the focus of that work is about helping orient people to that, about helping people orient to the corrective experience in the group. And then to me, there's that piece. This is my interpretation, so tell me if it's right, about can you tolerate that? Can you receive that? What are I call them the yabbits. But what are the blocks to being able to drop into?
Well, the couples, especially in the couples work, we're doing a couples workshop this weekend. We've done 15 retreats, right?
Amazing.
The couples, what happens, which was a side effect that we didn't realize until we did one, right? Is that they all fell in love with each other.
Oh, yeah.
The group really became the medicine, and they got to hear and see other people who wanted better relationships, who wanted to deepen their commitment. Because couples retreats, there's only one qualifier, one important qualifier, and it's for couples that want to stay together. So these retreats are not for high conflict couples.
Right.
They're for couples who are capable of self-regulating and who really want to be together. And we tell everybody that. So every couple knows they're in a room full of people who want to be together, who want to have better committed partnerships, right? And that helps a lot.
I love that as like a mindset variable. Like, can you imagine the conversations that happen in advance? Are we in this?
Yes.
Are we doing this?
Right.
Are we sure we both in? Right? I mean, that in and of itself becomes like a preparation piece. Like they say, we're committed to being together, are we? right?
Yeah, that's right. We say the retreat begins once you made the decision to join it.
Really,
So
I
we
love
give
that.
people poems to read to each other. We give them things to think about.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So if people want to follow you, if people want to find you, people want to learn from you, you've got this upcoming couples retreat. I don't know if it's next weekend. I don't know if you still have places or
It
people have
starts
attendance
Thursday,
here.
and yeah, we
Right.
don't have any openings,
Right.
but
Because
we're doing
yeah,
another
this
one in
one.
June.
Okay.
My
So the next.
website.
Okay.
Go to
And
my website,
what is your website?
relationshipresources.info.
Great.
And
Relationship
also I'm on
resources.
Instagram. I just started posting my poetry on Instagram,
Okay.
and I'm for a Big Tent, and I post there quite often. And
Okay.
I encourage people to join Big Tent. It's a fantastic
Right.
community of really knowledgeable people.
Yeah. I love that. So, well, Jayne, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing of your wisdom and your poetry and your knowledge and your invitation and your warmth. So, and your creativity.
You
So, thank you. This is very inspirational. Like, what I'm hearing loud and clear is the use of innovation and changing the meaning. And, let's kind of come together and explore the potential here. So, I'm really
Yeah,
grateful to you for that. So, thank you so much.
thank
Anything
you,
else you want to
Sandy.
say?
Thanks. Just I feel really grateful, and I'm so happy to share my wisdom with people who are just coming into this work and to inspire them to just drop into who they are.
Right?
And that's where the approach needs to come from.
Yeah.
The modalities are the framework, but being
Right.
real,
Uh-huh.
being present, showing up,
Yeah.
that's where it's at.
That's nice. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.